What if the most dangerous virus in America isn't biological, but intellectual? What if stupidity, arrogance, and blind loyalty were infecting the very heart of government? That's what U.S. Senator John Kennedy sets out to expose in his sharp, funny, and brutally honest book, How to Test Negative for Stupid. This isn't just a memoir. It's a behind-the-scenes tour of Washington, a crash course in political absurdity, and a reminder that common sense is rarer than it should be. In this summary, we'll journey through every chapter, exploring Kennedy's early life, political battles, and the hilarious yet eye-opening lessons he's learned along the way. Buckle up, this ride through the swamp is as entertaining as it is enlightening. The quiet part out loud. John Kennedy begins with candor. He's a U.S. Senator, and he has the right to remain silent, but not the ability. From his Louisiana roots to the halls of Washington, he's always believed that freedom of speech means little if you're too afraid to use it. In his signature down-home style, he describes how Washington's culture of fake decorum clashes with his habit of saying what everyone else is thinking. He recounts his early experiences as a new senator, like being warned by his peers to tone it down after interviews where he called out political hypocrisy. When he told Greta Van Susteren that some in Washington act like they're one of the founding fathers, colleagues quietly suggested he'd gone too far. But Kennedy doesn't do subtle. Whether he's grilling a clueless witness or skewering government waste, he insists that honesty is his duty. As he puts it, only dead fish go with the flow. The introduction sets the tone for everything that follows. Kennedy believes America deserves leaders who speak plainly, challenge bad ideas, and make the right people mad. The book, he says, is about candor, the weapon Washington fears most. Chapter 1. A Day in the Life of a U.S. Senator. The image most people have of a U.S. Senator is one of grandeur. Mahogany desks, powerful speeches, and men and women in crisp suits shaping the destiny of a nation. John Kennedy bursts that illusion within the first few lines of this chapter. His day-to-day life in Washington, D.C., he says, is far less glamorous and far more ordinary. He rents a small, overpriced one-bedroom apartment with second-hand furniture, a dining table that doubles as his desk, and his most striking decoration, a 12-foot stuffed alligator named Alphonse standing guard in his office. Kennedy calls the apartment's design aesthetic early Salvation Army, a sharp contrast to the image of senators lounging in luxury. From his small apartment near the Capitol, Kennedy walks to work most mornings. He finds the sight of the Capitol dome still inspiring, even after years in office. He reflects on how the building represents the endurance of the American experiment, a place where only the most serious citizens are meant to serve, then jokes that this explains why he himself works elsewhere. He spends his days reading voraciously, everything from the Wall Street Journal to The Economist, to policy memos and research papers from the Congressional Research Service. He genuinely enjoys learning, calling knowledge the truest form of power. But beneath his humor lies frustration. Kennedy exposes how the Senate, supposedly the world's greatest deliberative body, often functions more like a high school cafeteria. He describes long, empty speeches delivered to an audience of none, the chamber almost always deserted except for the speaker and a clerk. He admits he, too, has given such speeches, knowing that a staffer will later clip and send them home for media coverage. The truth, he says, is that I can count on one hand the times a Senate speech changed a vote. He talks candidly about his colleagues, the eloquent ones, the showmen, and the bureaucrats. He admires some senators for their intelligence and work ethic, but notes that others are more concerned with posturing. Kennedy's tone is brutally honest, but rarely cruel. Even when criticizing, he maintains a sense of humor and humanity. He explains the absurd Senate rules, like the fact that only milk and water are allowed on the floor, and marvels at how government can take months to accomplish nothing. He finds a rule book so complicated that he likens reading it to being run over by a truck twice. Kennedy's reflections move between admiration for America's system and exasperation at its inefficiency. He highlights senators like Susan Collins and Jeanne Shaheen for their integrity, calling them the kind of people who make this place work. Then he shares wild anecdotes, heated arguments where senators shout profanities across the table, or moments of surprising humor that break the tension. Through it all, Kennedy insists that most senators are good people doing a hard job in a broken system. His conclusion: you don't have to be crazy to serve in the Senate. They'll train you. Chapter 2. Home Sweet Home. After the political theater of Washington, Kennedy takes us to the heart of his world, Louisiana. To him, home isn't just a place. It's an identity, a moral compass, and a reminder of what real life looks like. He begins with humor, noting that Texas may be 5 times bigger, but Louisiana is 10 times more interesting. Then he paints a portrait of a state rich with culture, food, and people who value hard work and honesty over status. Kennedy grew up in Zachary, Louisiana, a small town where everyone knew everyone. His father was a self-made businessman, and his mother a teacher. They believed in discipline, faith, and education. Kennedy learned early that there was no substitute for work. By age 11, he was cleaning construction sites and carrying lumber for his father's company. His father, determined to teach him humility, introduced him to the crew as "This is my son. He now works for all of you." Kennedy recalls this lesson vividly. It taught him respect, obedience, and that no job is beneath anyone. He tells stories of mowing lawns in the Louisiana heat, working behind the counter at a lumber yard, and even accidentally ramming a forklift through a warehouse wall. Each mishap taught him something about responsibility and self-awareness. One of his favorite sayings, "Life is hard, but it's harder when you're stupid," emerges from these lessons. Kennedy also describes Louisiana itself with affection. The Cajun people, their humor, their food, and their sense of community. He admires their ability to enjoy life even amid hardship. If God had created Boudreaux and Marie instead of Adam and Eve, he jokes, they would have eaten the snake instead of the apple. But beneath the humor is pride. Louisiana's diversity, from its swamps to its cities, reflects the best of America, resilient, colorful, and complex. At home, Kennedy's life is simple. He and his wife, Becky, live in Madisonville, where they help start a Methodist church. He reads, hunts, and fishes when not working, and still answers constituent calls. Louisiana, he says, keeps him grounded. It reminds him who he works for and why politics matters in the first place. Chapter 3. My First Job in Government. Kennedy's entry into public service came when he served as legal counsel to Louisiana Governor Buddy Roemer in the late 1980s. Fresh out of academia and filled with idealism, Kennedy wanted to make government smarter, faster, and fairer. What he found, instead, was how easily good intentions are strangled by bureaucracy. Working under Governor Roemer, Kennedy witnessed the endless tug-of-war between vision and politics. Every reform, no matter how logical, threatened someone's power or money. He describes meetings where truth and politics collided, and politics always won. Government, he quips, is where efficiency goes to die. But Kennedy didn't walk away bitter. These early lessons hardened his belief in common-sense governance. He saw that intelligence wasn't enough. You needed courage and moral clarity to survive in public life. He began developing the principles that would define his career. Always tell the truth, resist political fads, and remember that public money belongs to the people, not the politicians. He learned that bureaucracy often hides behind good manners. People in power smiled while protecting inefficiency. Kennedy's solution was radical honesty. Say what everyone knows, but no one dares to say. This philosophy became his political identity. Chapter 4. Running. Running for office, Kennedy explains, is a brutal mix of faith, fatigue, and humility. He compares campaigns to marathons where you shake 1,000 hands, answer the same questions 100 times, and still end the day wondering if anyone actually cares. Yet, for him, campaigning was less about ambition and more about connection. He loved talking to people in diners, barbershops, and town halls, real conversations that reminded him why he entered politics in the first place. Kennedy admits he wasn't a natural campaigner. He disliked pretending and refused to adopt the overly polished persona that consultants encouraged. If you fake who you are, he says, voters can smell it from a mile away. That authenticity cost him some races, but he doesn't regret it. Losing taught him humility, winning taught him gratitude. He tells stories of awkward encounters, long drives across Louisiana, and the exhaustion of balancing hope with realism. Campaigning, he concludes, reveals character. It exposes who can withstand pressure without selling out their values. Politics, Kennedy writes, isn't about who's smartest. It's about who's toughest and most honest when nobody's looking. Chapter 5, An Education. Education, for Kennedy, was both a privilege and a proving ground. After high school, he attended Louisiana Tech, then transferred to Vanderbilt University, where he immersed himself in academics. From there, he won a scholarship to Oxford University, where he earned advanced degrees in law and philosophy. These experiences shaped his intellect and worldview, but they also revealed the dangers of elitism. At Oxford, Kennedy was surrounded by brilliant minds, yet he noticed that brilliance often came with arrogance. Many people could quote philosophers but lacked the wisdom to relate to ordinary life. That realization humbled him. You can have all the degrees in the world, he writes, but without humility and common sense, you're still uneducated. He recalls long nights of study, fierce debates with peers, and moments of introspection walking the cobblestone streets of Oxford. Those years taught him to question assumptions and think deeply, but also to value plain talk over intellectual jargon. When he returned to America, he brought with him both academic rigor and a disdain for pretension. Kennedy's education, both formal and practical, forged his philosophy. Intellect means little without integrity, and wisdom is found as much in experience as in books. Whether in classrooms or on construction sites, he learned the same truth. Hard work, honesty, and humility never go out of style. Chapter 6, Sweet Victory, took long enough. Kennedy's victory in the Senate race didn't come easily. It was the culmination of years of perseverance, rejection, and learning to lose gracefully. He opens this chapter by describing election night, the mixture of adrenaline and exhaustion as the votes trickled in. When the final results confirmed his victory, he felt not triumph, but relief. It wasn't pride, he writes. It was gratitude. Gratitude that the people of Louisiana had finally given me a chance to serve them. He recounts how each of his previous campaigns had taught him something essential about politics. Losing, he insists, builds character faster than winning ever will. After each loss, he examined his approach, listened more closely to voters, and honed his message until it was unmistakably authentic. By the time he finally won, he understood what mattered most. People don't want a performer. They want someone who listens, tells the truth, and keeps their word. Kennedy offers a vivid picture of life during those first few days in office. There's the excitement of walking into the Senate chamber for the first time, the awe of seeing his name etched above an office door, and the instant realization that he's now one of only 100 people tasked with shaping the future of a nation. Yet, amid the celebration, he reflects on the sobering weight of responsibility. Power, he says, is like whiskey. It doesn't change who you are, it just reveals it. He shares candid reflections on the tension between ambition and duty. Washington, he notes, tempts every newcomer with attention and influence. But Kennedy is quick to remind himself and his readers that public office is a job, not a throne. His victory, he concludes, was less a reward and more a responsibility to do what's right even when it's unpopular. Chapter 7, New in Town. Kennedy's first months in Washington were equal parts confusion and comedy. He describes arriving at the Capitol like a freshman on the first day of school, trying to find the bathrooms, learning which elevators are for senators, and discovering that everyone seems to know everyone else except you. It's like high school, he says, but everyone has press coverage. The learning curve was steep. He recalls being handed thick policy binders filled with acronyms he didn't yet understand and being expected to vote on them the next day. Staffers were helpful but blunt. You'll never read everything, Senator. Just make sure you read enough to know when someone's lying. Kennedy quickly realized that Washington runs on information and misinformation. The key was discernment. As a freshman senator, He found himself sitting through countless meetings where people spoke for hours without saying anything. He writes about learning to decode Washington speak. Phrases like, "with all due respect," translation, "you're an idiot," or "bipartisan cooperation," translation, "prepare to be disappointed." Humor became his survival mechanism. He began using his signature wit in interviews and hearings, sometimes to make a point, sometimes to stay sane. But beneath the jokes lies genuine admiration from many of his colleagues. Kennedy recounts personal interactions with senior senators who guided him through the maze of rules and customs, showing that mentorship still exists even in politics. Over time, he found his rhythm, balancing candor with diplomacy. His mission was simple: speak plainly, vote honestly, and never let the job change who he was. "If you start pretending," he writes, "you'll wake up one day and not recognize the person in the mirror." Chapter 8. Holding the Line. Politics, Kennedy explains, isn't just about passing laws. It's about holding on to principles when every incentive tells you not to. In this chapter, he dives into the everyday moral tests of public service. The temptation to please donors, the pressure from party leaders, and the subtle manipulation of media spin. He argues that true leadership means saying no even when it costs you. He recounts specific moments when he broke ranks with his own party, refusing to vote for bills that, in his view, wasted taxpayer money or trampled common sense. He describes the loneliness of those votes, the awkward glares from colleagues, the angry calls from party strategists, but he also remembers the quiet messages of support from ordinary citizens who thanked him for standing firm. Kennedy is clear: loyalty to a political party should never outweigh loyalty to the people. He condemns the tribalism that has consumed Washington, where disagreeing with your side is treated as betrayal. The test, he says, isn't whether you make everyone happy. It's whether you can look your constituents in the eye and tell them you did what you thought was right. He closes the chapter with a reflection on courage. It's not dramatic speeches or grand gestures. He says, it's the quiet conviction to do the right thing when no one's watching. Holding the line means refusing to surrender your common sense, no matter how loud the mob gets. Chapter 9. Two Wrongs. This chapter is Kennedy's sharpest critique of modern politics. He dismantles the illusion that stupidity is partisan, declaring instead that it's a bipartisan epidemic. He takes aim at both parties for hypocrisy, self-righteousness, and the obsession with winning rather than governing. If either party ever discovered humility, he jokes, they'd patent it and charge admission. Kennedy recounts several stories that illustrate his point. He describes heated committee hearings where both sides acted more like theater troupes than lawmakers, trading insults for sound bites. He also remembers moments of unity, brief flashes when common sense prevailed, before politics dragged everything back into the mud. He argues that America's biggest problem isn't lack of intelligence, but lack of perspective. Too many politicians, he says, confuse ideology with wisdom. You can't fix stupid with more partisanship, he writes. His call to action is simple. Voters should stop treating politics like a team sport and start demanding results. Kennedy's humor cuts through the cynicism. He admits he's made mistakes, too, but insists that humility and humor are the antidotes to self-delusion. The moral of the chapter: two wrongs don't make a right, but they'll sure make a headline. Chapter 10. Speed Round. Kennedy closes his main narrative with a rapid-fire series of reflections, quotes, and lessons drawn from his years in public life. Each paragraph feels like a condensed version of his worldview, equal parts humor, honesty, and homespun philosophy. He fires off his observations. In Washington, the truth is often the first casualty of convenience. You can't fix stupid, but you can vote it out. If common sense were lard, Washington couldn't grease a pan. These lines capture his frustration and affection for the country he serves. He loves America fiercely, but he's unafraid to mock its follies. The stories that accompany his quips range from absurd to inspiring. He recalls bureaucratic nightmares, where agencies spent millions studying problems that could have been solved over a cup of coffee. He tells stories of small-town heroes back home who reminded him that decency still exists. And he praises everyday Americans who work hard, tell the truth, and expect little more than fairness in return. The chapter feels like Kennedy talking directly to the reader, or in this case, the viewer, leaning in with a grin and saying, "Don't take yourself too seriously, but take your country seriously." It's the perfect summary of his political philosophy: integrity, humility, and humor. Those, he says, are the real tests of intelligence, and the surest way to test negative for stupid. Epilogue, saying the quiet part out loud. Kennedy closes the book as he began, with honesty and heart. He reflects on his career, his state, and his belief that America, despite its flaws, remains the greatest country in history. He encourages readers to be brave enough to speak their minds, even if it makes enemies. His final thought: testing negative for stupid isn't about IQ. It's about courage, integrity, and a refusal to surrender your judgment to anyone. In a world that rewards noise, Kennedy reminds us that truth, spoken plainly, is the loudest sound of all. John Kennedy's How to Test Negative for Stupid is more than political humor. It's a manifesto for clear thinking and fearless speech. Through his stories of small-town roots, Senate showdowns, and stubborn honesty, he offers a rare look inside American politics with wit and wisdom. Whether you agree with his politics or not, his message stands: don't be afraid to call out nonsense. Think for yourself. And above all, test negative for stupid.